Today we're talking about values and saturation. Okay, we covered in part 1 of this series of videos, we covered the basic primary colours. Red, blue and yellow mixed together, you will get orange, purple and green. That's your basic colour wheel. If you just paint in the same intensity of colour, your paintings are going to be very, very flat. You're not going to get any kind of contrast, you're not going to get any depth into your painting, which is fine if that's what you want, but for the most part, in order for things to look realistic, in order for things to look three-dimensional, you want to have very, very light areas in your painting, moving through a good range of tones to very, very dark. And the lighter you can get your lightest tones and the darker you can get your darkest tones, the better depth you're going to get into your painting. And we do this with watercolor by adding water to the paint, funnily enough. Now, just a slight side note, if you're painting in oil or acrylic, you don't add water, basically. You do paint with water with acrylic, but you don't want to dilute your acrylic paint more than about 30% water, because the acrylic paint starts to lose its viscosity at that level, any more than 30% water, and you're going to start, the paint's going to, as you start to paint over it, some of the paint's going to start like lifting off. So you don't do that with acrylic. This particular video is purely really watercolor. With acrylic, you'll lighten your colours with white paint, various bits of white paint to get your shades and that way. I'll do another video on that. There's another thing you can do with acrylic paint is add glazing medium to it, which you'll get a similar effect then to the watercolour with just glazing colour over the top, and it'll make the paint very, very translucent. But I'll do another video on that. At the moment, this particular video, although the parts 1 and 2 the colour theory relates to acrylic, oil and watercolour, this particular video is really watercolour, because we're talking about diluting the paint a lot with water, and you wouldn't do that with acrylic, and you certainly wouldn't do it with oil. As I say, you can go from very dark, intense red right up to very, 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 almost a hint of pink with just the one paint, cadmium red, so you can see the different values you can get there. Same with, then you go, the 3 primary colours, ultramarine blue. Again, very, very intense with very little water in it, and the more water you add, just goes lighter and lighter and lighter until you get barely a hint. And the same with your yellow. So, if you can imagine, we started out with the basic colour wheel and 6 basic colours. Your cadmium red, your ultramarine blue and your cadmium yellow mixed together, you get your 3 secondaries, purple, orange and green, but they're all the same intensity. You can then start, when you're adding various degrees of water, you then get your orange, your purple and your green. So from going from having your 6 colours, even with those 6 colours, you can have a vast range of values and saturation. So then you go again, mixing your cadmium red, your ultramarine blue and cadmium yellow. You can get your secondary colours of orange, purple and green, and within those then a vast range of saturation. So you're going from very, very intense to very, very light, and very subtle tones you can create in your painting, again with just these 6 colours. Then in part 2 of the videos, we went to tertiary colours. So now if you apply the same principle as we did to our primary and our secondary to the tertiary colours, and apply the same principle, just adding a little bit of water each time to the darkest colour, you're getting another range of tones and shades, going from the most intense to the very lightest. And there we started with 3 basic colours of paint, and we can create all these shades and all these intensity and saturation and values of colour from just the 3 paints. We mix these 3, if you look back to part 1, to make our secondaries. Then from our secondaries back with our primaries, we can make our tertiary colours. And depending on how much water we add to the paint, you get all these different values. And you're immediately starting to get a vast range of colours, a vast library of colours that you can work with in your painting to get all those beautiful subtle tones and highlights and shades and darks and lights into your painting to make it as three-dimensional as you possibly can. Okay, to give you an example, mix the cadmium red and the ultramarine blue together, we get purple. And you can do the same, just add water to it to get the various subtleties in colour. But then if you mix your purple back with your blue, back to your primary colour again, if you remember in the tertiary colour video, if you mix more blue in with your purple, you get blue purple. And all the various intensity of colour and value of colour with that. By the same token, if you mix the purple back with the red, you get red purple. And again, depending on the amount of water you put in, will depend on the actual intensity of the colour that you get. So that's an example. You can apply the same principle with the red and the yellow. So you're getting your yellow oranges, your orange and your red orange. And not forgetting the blue and the yellow. You're getting your yellow green, green and blue green. So hope that was of help. Slightly different principle with the acrylic and oil. As I say, the acrylic, you need to, instead of adding water, you're going to add white paint. Same with oil. If you're wanting to lighten the colour and not change the colour, you will add white paint. If you're wanting to thin the colour with acrylic, you'll use a glazing medium. And with oil paint, if you're wanting to thin that down and make it more translucent, you would use something like liquid. So I hope that was of use to you, and I'll see you again next time. Thanks for watching.